Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. Joseph Goebbels said, "Think of the press as a great keyboard on which the government can play." In this video, I'm going to discuss one example of that. The Biden administration claims that 2020 was the worst wildfire season on record. More than 10 million acres burned in the United States. That sounds really scary, except for the fact that it's not true. In 1945, the United States Forest Service published this document. Every year, more than 200,000 fires burn and sear the forests of the United States. Every year, an average of 31 million acres of forest land is burned over, an area larger than the state of New York. So around the time this document was written, the United States averaged 31 million burn acres every year. But the Biden administration claims that 10 million acres in 2020 was a record. The burn acreage in 2020 was about one-third of the average around 1945. Let's take a look now at how the Biden administration created this disinformation campaign. Here's a document from the United States Forest Service from the year 2010. It showed that burn acreage in the United States peaked in 1930 and 1931 at more than 50 million acres. Not surprisingly, the record burn acreage from the 1930s also corresponded with record heat waves. The graphs on the right are from the National Climate Assessment, and they show how intense heat waves were during the 1930s. Large forest fires tend to be associated with heat and drought. As of January 29, 2021, the National Interagency Fire Center showed the very high burn acreage from the 1930s on their website. But a few days later, the new Biden administration deleted all of the data prior to 1983. This is what you see if you go to that same website now. So according to the Biden administration, 2020 was a record because they hid all of the data prior to 1983. This is what the complete data set from 1927 through 2021 looks like. As you can see, 2020 was nowhere near a record. In fact, it was well below average. If New York Times writers actually read their own newspaper, they would know that the claims being made by the Biden administration are fraudulent. They reported in 1938 that almost 22 million acres burned in 1937, with a forest fire every 3 minutes. Burn acreage in 2020 was less than half of 1937. And here's another document which the Biden administration has deleted. Until last year, it was on the National Interagency Fire Center website. It said, in the conterminous United States during the pre-industrial period from 1500 to 1800, an average of 145 million acres burned every year. Today, only 14 million acres are burned annually by wildland fire. So when atmospheric carbon dioxide was at pre-industrial levels, 145 million acres burned every year. But as atmospheric carbon dioxide has increased, burn acreage in the United States has declined more than 90%. The Biden administration wants people to believe recent fires are being caused by carbon dioxide, so they've hidden all of the critically important inconvenient data prior to 1983. By erasing this document, the Biden administration has once again inverted reality. This version of the report was written in response to a massive federal government screw-up in the year 2000. In the year 2000, the United States Forest Service started what they called a controlled burn in high winds near my hometown of Los Alamos, New Mexico. Their controlled burn burned up 43,000 acres and more than 400 houses in Los Alamos. Then the federal government blamed the fires which they started on climate change. I took this photograph at the burn area last autumn. The messy, overgrown pine forest which burned is being replaced by a beautiful stand of aspen and oak. I was born in Los Alamos, and the mountains are much more beautiful now than they've been at any other point during my lifetime. Pine forests need fire, and decades of man-made fire suppression left huge amounts of fuel on the ground. So when the man-made fire did come, it turned out to be very large. Climate alarmists believe forest fires are a bad thing, but they're actually essential for forest health. We do need forest fires, but we don't need data tampering by government agencies. By erasing the inconvenient data prior to 1983, the Biden administration has created a completely fake story about forest fires. 80 years ago, a famous Austrian said, "Through clever and constant application of propaganda, people can be made to see paradise as hell and also the other way around. to consider the most wretched sort of life as paradise. And that's exactly the situation the government is creating in the year 2021. The big lie is being used against fossil fuels to get people to willingly give up the reliable supply of energy which they depend on for their day-to-day survival. The big lie is being used to turn a safe, comfortable existence into one that's dangerous and uncomfortable. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on this insanity for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.